What's up, co-reporters? Welcome back to my channel. Listen, I am so happy that we're back with a new season of The Ultimatum. And actually, more importantly, I am ecstatic that this time the batch of couples that we have are more age appropriate for this sort of an experience. I just remember scoffing at the first season at how young these people were. I think there were some literal teenagers on the show, some 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds talking about marry me right now or I'm dying. It was just so ridiculous to me, right? But this year, the contestants' ages are typically above 25, and then it goes up to 32 years old, which I think is a lot more appropriate. There are some people who are younger, about 24. I think there's only one couple that's 23, 24-ish, and it's actually this couple right here. It's the Southern couple of, what are their names again? James and Ryan, okay? And the reason that I think that this is like okay is because they come from like a certain culture where it's normal for people to get married this young, and they stay together long after getting married this young. So I'm like, all right, let's take these 23, 24-year-olds, like, even though I typically would not want people that young on the show. You know, I really do like them both. They seem like sweet people. Like, I love their accent. You know who else has a really nice accent, by the way? Trey. I don't notice an accent in Raya. Maybe she's like a transplant or something, but I know that Trey, James, and Ryan all come from South Carolina. So they've got this beautiful like Southern drawl that I love, but I digress. So let's get into some of these couples and who's issuing the ultimatum, who doesn't want to get married, et cetera, et cetera. So we've got this couple that goes by the name of Antonio and Roxanne. So Roxanne doesn't want to marry Antonio despite his ultimatum because she doesn't see him as someone who works as hard as her, and he's not as ambitious as her. And she just wants so much from a partner in terms of him being a workaholic the way that she is. She talks a lot about having a company, but we never really find out what type of company it is, right? Like when people have traditional jobs, we find out what their jobs are. Like, for example, Trey talks all the time about being an engineer, but when it comes to Roxanne, all she's allowed to say is that she owns a company. And I'm like, okay, I get that they don't want to give her free advertising for her company, but I feel like at least let her say that, like, she does this, she does that. I had to go to her Instagram page to find out that her company is in like pasties or whatever, you know, like she could have just said that, like, you know, I help women hide their nipples in like certain outfits or whatever. Like that would have been nice to know, but whatever. So next we've got another couple. It is Lisa and Brian, and Lisa wants to marry Brian because it's been almost 2 years of their relationship, but Ryan doesn't want to marry Lisa just yet because he doesn't feel like he's in a financial position to provide for his family, which I get. But at the same time, so long as you're ambitious and you've got a job and you're building towards something, like you can get married and still work towards that. Like it's not like an entry pass where you have to have XYZ before you do it. You know what I mean? But I do hear that like men typically feel that way. They have to feel like all of their ducks are aligned before they marry. They're not like women in terms of, oh, like we'll progress and we'll get there. So, all right, I guess, you know, not my business. Now let's go back to that cute little Southern couple, right? The 23-year-olds. So Ryan wants to marry James, and they've been together for 7 years. I think this is the longest standing relationship of all, despite them being the youngest. And that's because they are high school sweethearts. The thing is, though, that James doesn't believe that there's one true love in a world of 7 billion people, which I do think is a fair position to have, but it doesn't mean that like you can't marry someone and like make them your one true love. You know what I mean? I do believe that we all have like multiple people that we could be wildly compatible with, but it's up to you to pick one and build your life with them if that's something that you want to do. You can't just be like, oh, there's billions of people here, so let me just, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what he means by that. Like, it's just, I don't know. It seems very childish. But again, he's very young, so it's to be expected. Now, let's get to Trey and Raya. So this couple has only been dating for about 2 years at this point, and Trey is the one who issued the ultimatum. He wants to marry Raya, but she's scared because she's only seen toxic love, situationships, and marriages in her life. And she really gets off on comparing her love life to TikTok. So like, you know, you'll see a lot of these grand gestures on TikToks of like these romantic couples and whatnot. Mind you, half the time these couples end up breaking up and confessing that like the relationship was actually toxic behind the scenes or someone cheated or whatever. So it is a little bit ridiculous to me that she is so fixated on like the Netflix love or whatever. It's kind of like, well, girl, red flag. Why don't you kind of look a little bit elsewhere? Because this is just not a good idea. So speaking of her obsession with TikTok love, they share a story about how one time Trey, I think it was their first Valentine's Day, Trey decided to go all out, make it super romantic. He had Beyonce music playing. He had lingerie on the bed, rose petals everywhere. And so, you know how Raya showed her appreciation for all that? She basically just said, oh, well, it's not like the stuff you see on TikTok. And so that apparently hurt him a lot, to the point where he has never really like done it again. Like he's never done anything romantic again in the 2 years that they've been together, which I find to be a little bit ridiculous. To me, it's like, if you found her ungrateful and you didn't like her reaction, just talk about it, get through it so that you can continue to like show up romantically in this relationship, or leave her and find someone else who doesn't like hold their partner to these like TikTok expectations, you know, find someone a little bit more mature. Like I find that weird, the idea that they've been in a relationship for 2 years with absolutely no romance because the first time he did something on Valentine's Day, she didn't appreciate it. You know what I mean? Very strange. Now, when it gets to Raya and why she doesn't actually want to marry Trey right now, she says that it's because she kind of worries. By the way, she's 25 years old and he's 29 years old, which might explain some, you know, some of her actions. And this stuff would have happened like when she was 23. Now, she wonders if she doesn't want to marry Trey because she's waiting for a real soulmate that makes her jump at the chance to marry him, right? And then she immediately talks about finding another one of these partners hot. Guess who it is? Well, there you go. It's Brian. She talks about how Brian was really attractive to her and like he made her feel like tingly in her bones when she saw him. So I'm like, oh, she is going to be a trip. I am really, you know, kind of holding my breath when it comes to her. I'm hoping she's taking this seriously and whatnot, but I am a little bit nervous just because of the early comments, right? Now, let's get into another couple. So this next couple is Kat and Alex, and they seem very compatible to me to be honest with you, visually and like lifestyle-wise, when they talk about all the things that they enjoy doing together, this to me seems like the most compatible couple. The one where I'm like, why doesn't he want to get married? Like, how often are you going to find like a really beautiful girl who wants to do all of these awesome, adventurous things that you want to do, right? They like to do mountain climbing, hiking, canoeing, like all sorts of things. Like they are so outdoorsy. I'm sorry, but like a lot of people are lazy. A lot of people are couch potatoes. So if you have all that in like a package and, you know, she's beautiful, she loves you and all that, like why, you know what I mean? Like, why don't you want to get married to her? I don't know. He's giving me F-boy vibes, to be honest with you. So, and then just like from some of the stuff that he was saying, it seems to me that he suffers from grass is greener syndrome, where there's nothing wrong with your actual relationship, but you just wonder what, like, you know, what things look like on the other side. If the grass is greener, you know, I think they also call it the 80-20 principle, where someone already has 80% of the things you want, but you are just so grass is greener that you would be willing to give up this person, this 80%, and just go find yourself a 20%, you know, because you were just not that smart about love. To be honest with you guys, he gives me Kwame vibes, and Kwame is that guy from season 4 of Love is Blind. Remember whenever Chelsea would bring up serious relationship topics to him and he would just, this annoying laugh, or just like kind of like evade it, like with his looks and stuff. That is how Alex is. He's very evasive. I don't like him. I think Kat deserves better. I hope she gets a really good match and hits it the hell off. Oh, Lord. So, you know, remember when we were talking about how Trey stopped doing romantic things for Raya when she didn't appreciate his initial Valentine's Day gesture? Well, guess what, you guys? They were not exaggerating, because we go back to them and they start telling stories about he doesn't even plan dates, like literally nothing. He's giving this girl romantically nothing. And he's confused, shocked Pikachu, that she doesn't want to marry him. Like, what? The one thing, though, is maybe he thinks he's being romantic because he funds her lifestyle, right? She moved into his apartment. He takes care of the two of them. She's like a waitress. So like she doesn't make that much money. So I guess like if they travel or they do activities or this, that, and the other, it's him paying. So I guess to him, that means that he's like fulfilling his role in the relationship and being romantic or whatever, even though that's not the case. It's even just like the small things, you know, being thoughtful and whatnot. One thing that Raya really doesn't like about Trey is that like he's the type to like break his back to support a family and then kind of be resentful about it. And she feels like she doesn't want to just like slip into that slot of being his trophy wife or whatever. She wants to have a career, this, that, and the other. But to be honest with you, I'm wondering what the holdup is. You had this man buy you a car. You're 25 years old, which is like, you know, old enough to be in school or to have finished or something like that. If you really want a career, why have him buy you this nice dream car when you can have him finance your education if that's what you need? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I feel like she says one thing, but moves in a different way. So to be honest with you, I'm not sure. Now let's get into Lisa and Brian. There's a problem with the age difference between the two of them. And I'm happy to see that Lisa kind of ultimately realized it. Like, I'm sorry, y'all, you could not pay me to date a younger guy. It's just not for me. Kudos to the girlies who can, but it's just not for me. So Lisa, she's 32 years old. She's a vice president of clinical services. Brian, he's 29 years old and he's a financial analyst, right? So these are great jobs. You would think he like, you know, felt financially secure and like ready to like move up in his life and like in his relationship, sorry. But she's like, you know what? And she says this to him, maybe I should be with a man who's more my level. If like the finances are such a big deal for you or this, that, or the other. Like, I think it like the age difference is starting to show here. That's what she said. And then he kind of seems a little bit feel like he was feeling emasculated by that, but it's like, well, I'm sorry, but it's the truth. I think she's light years ahead of you. She's a VP, you know? And it's just different when it's the woman that's very far ahead. Like guys don't really love that most of the time. So they seem to have a good night despite this kind of little tiff. Like we saw them getting a little freaky under the sheets and everything like that. And then it goes dark. And then we come back to them and we cut to Lisa like hyperventilating in the bed, trying to call the producers or whatever via the bedroom phone and everything, like talking about how she wants to get out of there. She doesn't want to do this anymore. Like she's really freaking out. She's sobbing. Like it was a lot. And, you know, it gets weird because the next morning they start talking and, you know, about how like this is like their final day as a couple. They have to break up to date other people. And she's like, oh, like, I don't really get upset about things like that. Like, you know, I feel like I'm someone, if I get upset, it's proportionate to like the situation or whatever, which isn't the case here, right? Because she's the one who dragged him on this show about dating other people and whatnot. So to be hyperventilating like that and crying and reaching for the phone and stuff is not really proportionate to the situation. And she's like, I wouldn't have suggested that we come here if I couldn't handle it, which just foreshadows something. At this point, I'm like, I think there's something wrong with this girl. Like something is just a little bit, there's a screw that's a little bit loose. And we're going to get into what that screw is. And we're going to talk about the domestic violence that we witnessed in this episode and how inappropriately it was handled and whatnot. So that's just a little bit of a teaser on that. Now, let's get back to this other couple. We're going back to the Southern couple. So back to James and Ryan. Ryan with two N's, by the way. So James thinks that Ryan is too closed off emotionally, like, and that she's emotionally unavailable. They don't talk about anything really profound. They just talk about like what they've done for that day. And then I start wondering, how have they been in a relationship for 7 years with no emotional debt? It just sounds so boring and unfulfilling. And then it kind of gets me thinking, I'm like, it's really crazy to me how long people will stay in a relationship that just doesn't work for them and just is, you know what I mean? Like, for example, it reminded me of Trey and Raya's relationship. I'm like, Raya, Trey has not done anything romantic for you in like how many years that you guys have been together? 2 years, and you're still there. Like, what's the point? Just get out at this point. Like, I'm sure she's talked to him about it and he hasn't stepped up in that capacity. So what's the point? You know, just like James and Ryan, like 7 years of being with someone who doesn't talk about anything other than the day to day. What's the point? You're emotionally unfulfilled. Why stick around for so long? Anyway, at this point, all the couples meet and have their little dates and whatnot. And then Roxanne, wow, she is pretty much immediately, you guys, attracted to one of the other guys. And that guy is actually Alex. And when I tell you why Roxanne is attracted to Alex, you're going to fall off your seat. Roxanne is attracted to Alex because Alex once owned a business. She's like, what? You want to own a business? Yeah, he owned a marketing agency. He claims that he sold it off. I don't know how true that is, to be honest with you. Something about him feels very inauthentic when he talks to Roxanne. It feels like he's posturing for her. So I don't believe him. I'm gonna go on the record and say that. So that was like her thing for him, like why she was so attracted to him. I'm like, girl, like what? Like you're so one-dimensional. So she keeps telling people that Antonio just might not be the right person for her. She's like, maybe I am ready to get married and whatnot, but perhaps it's just not with Antonio. Maybe like with the right guy, I would be like totally down for it, you know? And I feel like that is a running theme, which is why ultimatums make me cringe. I'm like, if you have to give someone else an ultimatum, they probably feel this way about you. And it's like, do you want to strong arm somebody into settling for you? Like, and it's not like I feel like they are settling for you. It's like they feel like they are settling for you, right? I don't know. Oh, Lord. Now, the couples, after they do their dates and whatnot, everybody in the experiment meets up to talk about how their dates went. And Lisa, Miss, I could totally handle this. I do not blow things out of proportion. I would not have signed us up for this if I couldn't handle it. Has a full-blown meltdown when she sees the way that Raya and Brian are looking at each other. They're just looking at each other and she is freaking out. I will say though, in her defense, they were like flirting. They were making eyes. The producers put that like funny, like little romantic, with the saxophone. They put that really funny kind of like romantic, cheesy like soundtrack in the back and everything. And so like you could really see it. And she gets up and she's like, I'm going to go pour a drink. Then after Brian and Raya, they go to the corner to like talk a little bit more about their connection and just each other. And then Lisa comes and she like breaks it up. And then she calls Raya the Hooters bitch behind her back because Raya works at Hooters, right? And then she goes off like, it's a lot. It's a lot, okay? By the way, she called Raya the Hooters bitch when she was talking to Roxanne about her and whatnot. And so she interrupts the conversation and Raya's like, all right, I'm going to exit stage left here. And then Brian is left alone with Lisa, the poor thing. And so Lisa confronts him about them like talking and like connecting and everything. And then she walks away. And then as she walks away, she mutters something under her breath about someone being an effing roach. I don't know if she's talking about Brian or if she's talking about Raya or whatever, but that was really like mean. I don't know why she jumped to being really mean. Like she watched season 1, she signed up for season 2, knowing exactly what the show is about. So why would she go and degrade people on the show for participating, like following the premise of it, you know? Like I really don't like that about her. She, again, there's a screw loose somewhere in there and I really don't like it. Now, this is where things get really bad. She's walking away. Brian is not engaging her. He's just like standing there minding his own business. And guess what Lisa does? Lisa turns around to get physical with Brian. She puts her hand in his face. I think the kids call this mushing somebody's face. And to me, it's an act of domestic violence. So let me show you what happened. She's like, oh, effing roach. And then she turns around and then she just does this to the man's head, but like in fast motion. I don't want to like take my makeup off, but let me do this. I'm going to put my hair in front of my forehead so I could do this. So she goes like this. And another thing, you know, and I was like, wow, girl, absolutely not. That was so unacceptable. And I was quite ashamed that nobody did anything about it. If Brian did that to her, everybody would have jumped in, and rightfully so. And production would have spoken about it, right? The host would have been trotted out to speak about that and to issue a PSA. But this was okay. I really didn't like that, to be honest with you guys. Lisa, like, girl, you need to get a control of yourself. And I feel like if this is what she's willing to do in front of everybody and in front of cameras, especially as a professional woman, a VP, no less, what is she doing in private? I wouldn't be surprised to hear that she was even more violent in private, you know? And Brian seemed like this had happened before. Like he seemed completely unfazed by the entire thing, which to me, again, shows that like this has to have happened at another time. Like, and that just makes me really, really, really sad. Like, I really didn't like the ending of this. I felt like it was very poorly handled. And I would love to, like, you know, when they do the reunion special, I would love to see this finally being properly addressed. Anyway, guys, that does it. A recap of what went down on season 2 of The Ultimatum, episode 1. What did you think about it? Let me know all of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. And I also want to know how you think they compare against the cast of season 1. As usual, we'll chat, of course. That's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.